Turn heads and bring the hype with a custom hype chain from Lotwin. Perfect for youth sports, fantasy football, or just flexing your pride. Go to Lotwin.com, use the promo code TCCPOD for 10% off your order. That's Lotwin.com, promo code TCCPOD for 10% off. Get your custom hype chain and get hype with Lotwin. What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for September 30th, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. Welcome to a Tuesday edition of the podcast, the final day of September. And then it's all aboard for the Red October Express. We got a big show today. Just going to warn you now, it might go a little off the rails. More on that in a minute. Lots of last minute things that popped in my head that make sense for the show. So more on that in a minute, but it is Tuesday. It's time for a little motivation / positivity, brought to you as always by the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network. Go to clashingconferences.com to see how you can get involved, join in the fun. This Day in Philly Sports History is a proud member of the Clashing Conferences podcast, or Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network. They have a lot of great podcasts. Go to clashingconferences.com for details. All right. So today isn't really necessary. I got to adjust the camera here. Today really isn't necessarily a single quote. I was reading, I've talked to you about Michael Sonbert before. He wrote a book, Rebel Culture. He's a leadership coach, a trainer. I've worked with him multiple times. Really good dude, knows his stuff, but sends a weekly newsletter. And he was talking about doing scary things, and he put a quote in there that his wife always says, and I really liked it. And the quote is, "It's always easier not to." And that's a great way to put it. It is always easier to not do something, to not do a scary thing, to not do something that's risky, and really anything out of your comfort zone and anything that's going to scare you or make you nervous. That's what he was talking about with the scary thing. But I mean, that can apply to anything, whether it's your job, starting a business, starting a workout plan, saying you're sorry, having a difficult conversation. It's always easier not to do it. My boss and I, we have a running joke that we've had for 10, 11 years now, where we always talk about when we make a difficult call to a parent or have a difficult call with a teacher, let's just eat the frog. Just do it. And it's always easier to put it off, as Michael's wife says. So if you take anything out of this week, it's go do the scary thing. Worst thing that can happen is you fail. And there's nothing wrong with failure. Fail, learn from it, move on, gamble, take calculated risks. Just the premise and the main idea here is learn from things and grow, and don't put off something because you're nervous or you're scared. Because remember, it's always easier not to do something. It would have been very easy for me to stay in bed today, but I was like, you know what? My legs are tight from starting to run and everything. I didn't have enough time. I slept in a little bit because Ella had a late volleyball game last night. So I knew I wasn't going to make it to the gym at 4:15. But I'm like, you know what? I'm getting up. I'm going to walk 2.5 miles around the neighborhood, and was able to do it. So it's always easier not to do something, but push yourself. Hold yourself accountable. Do the scary thing. And even if you fail big. And then learn from it and get better and grow. And that is this week's Tuesday motivation / positivity. Hopefully you can take something out of that. I know it was usually we do a singular quote, but in doing the research for this week, I'm like, oh, I like that quote, but I also like the part about the scary thing. So bottom line, don't be afraid to put yourself out there. Do the scary thing. And Tuesday motivation / positivity is brought to you by the Clashing Conferences Sports Fan Network. Go to clashingconferences.com, join in, and have some fun. All right, let's start with the Eagles. And I had a chance to kind of go back, watch some of the game, listen to some of the quotes and things post-game and even the day after press conferences. And I saw a lot of, and this was on both sides, talking about the refs. And, I'm never going to put something on the refs because truth of the matter is if you put yourself in a position where one bad call or miscall or a call that goes against you is what cost you the game. Like if you think back to Super Bowl 57, everybody talks about Bradbury's hold, whether or not it wasn't. Bottom line is they should have never been in that position anyway. So it's easy to do that. But the refs were pretty bad in this game against the Bucs on both sides. Like I said, they missed a few holding calls on the Bucs, but Quinyon got away with at least, I counted 2 minimally, that he was literally pulling on the undershirt. And how refs missed that, I have no idea. So yes, I'm acknowledging the refs were bad, but they were equally bad for both sides. They are finding ways to win, though, and I think you can't overlook that. For so long, those were games that if you're from a certain generation, certain age group like my age, you know that Philly teams find ways to lose those games. So to see the Eagles winning these games, like against the Chiefs, the Rams, and now this week against the Bucs, hanging on, those are games that in the past I've seen this team lose. And you never feel comfortable. That's why in the Super Bowl, the Eagles were up 24-0, and I still was not comfortable. And that's because that's what we've experienced. That's what we've witnessed. That's what we've been through. But this team has that championship dog mentality where they're not out of games. They're holding on to win. Might not be pretty, but they're holding on to win. And I think what's wrong with them is fixable. So that brings me into the issue. And we might as well lump in the A.J. Brown thing with this. A lot of people coming down on A.J. And first and foremost, the way he handled it, probably not the best way to do it. He was cryptic. He didn't call anybody else out specifically. But it might be something you don't post on Twitter. But since it did, he did, and it happened, let's address it, because Nick Sirianni said he's going to handle it all internally, this, that, and the other. But let's look at the crux of what he was saying. He's pissed. As well he should be. We're all pissed. We are all saying the same thing that AJ is saying. Jalen Hurts said the same thing to Pam Oliver after the Rams game, essentially saying the offense is playing not to lose. They're not attacking, and that is what the play calling was in the second half of the Rams game. They were not looking to win that game. They were looking not to lose it. So AJ, the quote he put, it was a Bible scripture, and said something along the lines, if you're not being listened to. I wonder if this is a Nick Sirianni, Kevin Patullo problem. I wonder if the team has gone to either Nick or Kevin and expressed their concerns and their frustration. And that's where that specific quote. And again, I'm making huge leaps and speculating and connecting dots and making inferences here. But the quote that he said was, if you're not being listened to kind of back away. I wonder if they have gone to him and it's been ignored. And if it has been, that is a Nick Sirianni problem. And whether or not AJ should have addressed it in-house probably would have been the better way, but maybe he did. And this was like his way of, I don't want to say crying for help, but trying to bring light to what's going on. Because if you really are connecting it, and they're all saying the right things publicly. Jordan Mailata has his show on WIP. He said for 3 weeks now that they're close. They're just one block away. But, okay, that's been like 3-4 weeks now we've been hearing you're one block away. To me, that goes back to the scheme. That goes back to the offensive game plan. You have Jalen Hurts saying, playing not to lose, and then whatever he did in the second half against the Rams, and then it carried that over into the first half, but they had a big lead at halftime against Tampa. And that play calling and the way they played in the second half, they were playing not to lose. They weren't trying to throw the dagger like they did in the Super Bowl. They weren't trying to step on this team's throat, which they should have. So I'm wondering if there's more to this. And AJ, obviously, because he's the one that put that out, is going to take the heat for that. But I don't think this is an A.J. Brown problem. I think if the Eagles don't play this right, this is a larger issue. I feel, and I've said it for the first 4 games, and as much as I respect Jordan Mailata, come on, man, you're 1 block away for 4 weeks. And you mean to tell me, quote unquote, the best offensive line in the game is not able to make those adjustments 4 straight weeks? This is a Kevin Petula, Nick Sirianni play calling scheme problem. And I don't know if it's a philosophy, a mindset, but I'm on Team AJ here. Did he do it the right way? Maybe not. He probably shouldn't air dirty laundry, even though he didn't name anybody. But let's be real. We can read between the lines. Jalen Hurts has already said similar things. Like, we're not blind. We see what we see. So I think this is not necessarily, and everybody's like, oh, AJ's going to mess around and get himself traded. No. First of all, it'd be such a huge dead cap hit, 1. 2, look at their record with AJ in the lineup. But 3, he's 100% right. And I think Nick Sirianni talks all the time in his day after press conference about enjoying the win, enjoying the moment, but then coming in the next day and being honest with each other. I think somebody, Nick, needs to be honest with either you or Kevin Petula. You're too good on offense to play not to lose. And you've gotten lucky to hang on, to come back and win that game against LA and then hang on to win against Tampa. Because if there was 3 more minutes in that game, and I know there's not, I'm just saying, 3 more minutes, Tampa Bay would have sent that game to overtime, and we all know how that would have played out. So I think if we're talking honesty, Nick, you need to be honest with Kevin Petula because something is changing. There's no way, and listen, Todd Bowles is one hell of a defensive coordinator, but there is no way that he's making that big of an adjustment and you're making nothing. It's like he did the opposite. So that's my take on that. AJ probably should not have done what he's done. I'm not saying that it was the appropriate way to deal with it. However, sometimes you got to do what you got to do because I think what he's saying is what we're all thinking is the same thing that Jalen Hurts said. And if you start connecting the dots, this isn't an A.J. Brown, this isn't a Jalen Hurts, a Saquon Barkley, or even an offensive line problem. This is strictly a Kevin Petula, which in turn becomes a Nick Sirianni problem. So I have the confidence that Nick's going to straighten it out and figure it out. I'm not down on Nick Sirianni. But, Nick, the ball is in your court. You talk about honesty. It's time to be honest with yourself here. So that's my take on that. But bottom line is they are 4-0. They're finding ways to win. And if you follow this podcast for any period of time or through any other football seasons, you know, kind of break the season into pods. First quarter pod, Eagles are 4-0. Toughest probably 4-game stretch they're going to have all year. And they come out of it 4-0. Gets a little easier this next 4. You got Denver, the Giants twice, starting a rookie quarterback, losing their best receiver. And the Vikings, not sure if it's going to be J.J. McCarthy or old pal Carson Wentz in that game, but gets a little bit easier. But that's my take on the Eagles. Let me know your thoughts, though. 267-495-8531. That's the Back to the Future voice and text line. And then, of course, yesterday I asked you who was the GOAT of the game. 50% of you, a lot, pretty evenly voted, but 50%, Dallas Goedert with his 2 touchdown catches is your GOAT of the game against the Bucs. All right, shifting gears to baseball. No Phillies game tonight. MLB playoffs kick off tonight. We'll be watching that Dodgers-Reds series as we get the winner of that. But it kind of got me thinking, and this is where we might go a little off the rails and take a hard left here, or a hard right. I just pointed to the right, but whatever. So went down a rabbit hole this morning while I was getting ready, and one of the guys I follow on TikTok does a lot with, calls himself Zennial, I think. He's like tail end Gen X, very beginning millennial generation, so he kind of straddles that line. Always talks about different things from the late 80s, early 90s, and right in my wheelhouse. So, and if anybody knows me personally, I have an affinity for TV theme songs, specifically from the 70s, 80s, and even into the early 90s. And truthfully, they don't make theme songs for TV shows the way they used to. But I went down a rabbit hole. I was watching Perfect Strangers theme song, Golden Girls, this, that, Cheers. But it got me thinking. There's a lot of good theme songs for the Phillies' potential playoff opponents. Obviously, you got LA, probably, and you can have a Philly tie here. You got the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But my all-time favorite TV theme song took place in LA, and that is The Greatest American Hero, the GOAT of TV theme songs. And then, of course, if it's the Reds, you got WKRP in Cincinnati. And then Chicago, you got Perfect Strangers, Family Matters. And then Milwaukee, one of the other GOATs. And I don't remember if was Happy Days in... I have to look at that. I don't know if Happy Days was in Milwaukee, but Laverne and Shirley was in Milwaukee. So we got some good TV theme show battles going on here. And I know none of this means anything, but there's not a ton of good sitcoms based in Philly that have good theme songs. So if you can think of any, let me know. The best one that I've been able to come up with so far is Amen, which it's up there as one of the better TV theme songs. But if you can think of a good sitcom with a good TV, because there's been a lot of shows set in Philly. I'm not saying that. But with that catchy, good, like 80s, 90s, like I feel like the same production company did all the theme songs. But Amen with Sherman Helmsley, one of my favorite shows. But that was set in Philly. Pretty damn good theme song. I don't know if I'd put it up there with like Perfect Strangers or Greatest American Hero, but it's a solid like Hall of Very Good song. But are there any good sitcom songs from Philadelphia? They have to be set in Philly, and I'm sure I'm missing something. So I'm asking you for help here. And this was literally within the past 10 minutes came up with this idea to go. But we can have a lot of fun with the TV theme songs this Major League Baseball postseason. All right, I promised this yesterday, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down over the course of the week so we have some Phillies things to talk about. But I made 10 bold predictions as well as the Phillies record and where they would end up in the postseason at the beginning of the season. So I'm going to go through all 11 of my picks over the next few days. Today I'll start with the first three. And I said Bryce Harper would have an MVP type season. He would hit 300, hit 30 homers, get 100 RBI. Close. Well, I'll say that. Did not hit that one, but it was close. He hit 261, did get to 27 homers, had 75 RBI. However, he did spend 27 games on the IL. So I won't say I hit that one, but I was pretty close. Maybe I was a little lofty on the batting average. Number two, I said Zach Wheeler will finally win the Cy Young. We kind of know how that played out. He was an all-star, 10-5, had 195 strikeouts, 2.71 ERA. Definitely in the top three of Cy Young voting before the injury. It was just unfortunate, so I'll give myself an L for that one. But number three, I'm going to give myself a win for. And I said Christopher Sanchez would be the number two Cy Young, or number two pitcher on the Phillies and would get Cy Young votes. 13-5, 212 strikeouts, 2.5 ERA. Probably going to finish second in the Cy Young voting behind Paul Skeens. So I'll give myself a check on that. And since it's baseball, going 333, I'll take that as a win on my first three. We'll do 4 through 6 tomorrow. But man, that Bryce one, I would, if he didn't get hurt with the wrist inflammation, may have had a shot. Zach Wheeler, of course, got hurt, but nailed the Christopher Sanchez one, so I'll take it. But I will be honest, the rest of them kind of go downhill from here. So stay tuned tomorrow for bold prediction recaps for numbers 4 through 6. And of course, tomorrow, Phillies play the inter-squad scrimmage against each other. Pretty cool that they're selling tickets to that game and donating it to charity. So I wish they were. I don't know if they are. I wish they were televising it, though. It'd be cool to see. But all right, let's do some quick housekeeping now that we just spent far too much time talking about 80s and 90s TV theme songs. But be sure to follow me on social media at Philly Jimbo. Subscribe to the YouTube channel Jimbo_Mont and continue to spread the word. Hit like, subscribe, review, all of that to help outsmart the algorithm. Comment. I try to answer all the comments. Excuse me. So be sure to do all that. And this is the last week to get those raffle tickets to support the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. You can win two tickets to every home game for all the four major teams. There's a 70-inch TV, trips to Clearwater, Florida. If you're interested, hit me up and I will send you the link for that. I know a lot of people have already entered in that. So, hey, it helps out the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame, but more importantly, tickets to two tickets to every home game next year it's pretty phenomenal. It's a good deal. So hit me up if you're interested. $20, and all the proceeds benefit the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. Want to show off your Philly pride without saying a word? Philly Goat has you covered. From tees, hoodies, shoes, and hats, their gear screams Philly louder than an Eagles fan at the vet. Whether you're tailgating in South Philly or trying to flex down the Jersey Shore, do it in style. Hit up phillygoat.com, use the promo code Jim Montgomery, and get 10% off your order. Philly Goat, because being Philly ain't a choice, it's a way of life. Go Birds! All right, September 30th, and we're going to do a lot of Phils here because it was a big day in Phillies history. First, we're going to go back to 1978. Phillies beat the Pirates 10-8. Randy Lurch pitched 5 innings, struck out 4, gave up 4 earned runs to get the win. Also went 2 for 2 at the plate with 2 homers as the Phillies win the National League East for the 3rd straight year. Good year. I was also born in 1978, but 78, the Phillies win their 3rd straight NL East title. Go all the way up to 2007. Phillies beat the Nationals 6-1. Ryan Howard went 3 for 4 with a homer. Jimmy Rollins went 2 for 3 with a walk, a triple, and 2 stolen bases. The triple was his 30th or 20th. I'm all over the place. Sorry about that. Jimmy Rollins went 2 for 3 with a walk, a triple, 2 stolen bases. The triple was his 20th of the year. That was the 2020-2020 season for him. Couple that with an 8-1 loss for the Mets. Phillies win the National League East after being 7 games back with 17 left to play. Jimmy Rollins called it at the beginning of the season, followed through with an MVP-type season as the Phillies returned to the postseason, winning the NL East for the first time since 1993 on this day in 2007. All because the Mets met it. And if you have not seen all of the memes or videos that people met, check on your Mets fans' friends because it's rough for them. But some of these ones that are coming out are absolutely hilarious. And other than perhaps the Cowboys, there's no team I'd like to see self-destruct and their fans just lose their minds than the Mets. So Mets gonna Met, but the Mets met it on this day in 2007 as the Phillies beat the Nationals. Mets lose to the Marlins, win the NL East for the first time since 1993. Now later that night in 2007, the Eagles were playing the Giants on Sunday Night Football, and Winston Justice decided to do his best turnstile impersonation. He was filling in for an injured Trey Thomas. Winston allowed 6 sacks that night, all by Osi Umenyiora, as the Giants sacked Donovan McNabb 12 times in that game. The Eagles lose 16-3, but the story was Winston Justice, who was supposed to be one of the tackles of the future. Didn't really work out that way for good old Winston as he did his turnstile. But I don't think anybody cared at that point because we weren't sure what the Eagles were in 2007. But the Phillies were going back to the postseason. Fast forward to 2009, Raul Bañez had 3 RBI including a 2-run homer as the Phillies beat the Astros 10-3, clinching their 3rd straight NL East title. So it was a day for the NL East championship. 1978, 2007 and 2009 Phillies win the NL East on this day. And I'd be remiss if I did not mention that all the way back in 1964, the Phillies' pennant postseason hopes, not officially, I guess, or maybe it was official, but they lost their 10th straight game. Yeah, I guess it would have been official. I guess they would have played a playoff had the Phillies, because they were, or made up a game or something. But the Phillies, after this loss, were 2.5 games out with 2 games left to play after being up 6 at the beginning of this losing streak. Everybody knows about the fold, but I'd be remiss if I did not mention that. And then yesterday's trivia question, I asked you, who are the top 5 scorers of all time in honor of Rick McLeish being the underrated and underappreciated athlete? That would be in order: Bill Barber, Brian Propp, Tim Kerr, Bobby Clark, and John LeClair. Nobody got Tim Kerr. Everybody got Propp. Everybody got Tim Kerr. Nobody got Brian Propp. He was the missing one for everybody. So thank you to everybody who reached out with the trivia question. We'll have another one here in a minute. And then finally, our final underrated, underappreciated Philly athlete for the month of September, Jon Runyan. He signed as a free agent in 2000 and was Andy Reid's first big free agent signing as head coach. And it was a good one. Jon Runyan made a Pro Bowl in 2002, started all 144 games that he played in and was available to play in for the Eagles in 9 years with the team. He anchored that line and just provided some stability coming over from the Titans. Was he a little bit of a dirty player? Depends on your interpretation, maybe. But he was one of the toughest players. He was a durable player. And alongside Trey Thomas on the other side of the line, he protected Donovan McNabb. And it was one of those things we never really had to worry about, except for when we played the Giants and Michael Strahan. But they had one hell of a rivalry as well. But Jon Runyan was a stalwart on that line. One of my favorite memories of Jon Runyan is just the way he would run out when he was introduced. He had the big pads on his arm, and he would just run like a robot. But he was a solid offensive lineman, kind of helped to build what Andy Reid was looking for. And it continues to this day with the Eagles. Depth on the offensive line, depth on the defensive line. But Jon Runyan was a cornerstone of that offensive line. And for like us, when we grew up with Randall and those guys not having any offensive line, it was great to have somebody. And he laid the groundwork for guys like Trey Thomas was already there, but laid the groundwork for bringing in Jason Peters and the Kelseys and the Lane Johnsons. So Jon Runyan kind of started it all off, and he was today's underrated and underappreciated Philly athlete. Didn't miss a game in 9 years with the Eagles, so pretty impressive. But it does lead to today's trivia question. Kind of a two-parter here. Who did Jon Runyan replace when he came in at left tackle or right tackle? And then who replaced him as right tackle for the Eagles? Hit me up. Discord channels, first link in the description. Any of my social media at Philly Jimbo, as well as the Back to the Future voice and text line 267-495-8531. Lots to talk about today. Give me your Philly theme song from a sitcom. Talk about the A.J. Brown situation. Am I being too lenient on A.J.? Get ready for the Phils. Did I miss a theme song from Milwaukee, Chicago, or L.A. or Cincinnati that maybe I should have? Let's have some fun with this on a Tuesday. In 2009, 2007, and 1978, Phils win the NL East. Each of those years on this day, Winston Justice did a turnstile impersonation against the Giants on Sunday Night Football in 2007. And then, of course, Phils lose their 10th straight in 1964, essentially ending their pennant bid. Got some stress-free baseball to watch. Will not be up watching the Dodgers-Reds series. Sorry, it's just 9 o'clock is past my bedtime. But remember, do the scary thing. Don't put it off. It's easier to not do something, but just suck it up, do it, and don't be afraid to fail. And if you fail, learn from it. And Nick, I'm kind of talking to you on this one. You brought your guy in. It's not working out. Okay, adjust, learn, and grow from it. There's your Philly tie for today's Tuesday Motivation Positivity. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History for September 30th, 2025. My name's Jim Montgomery. Go have yourselves a Tuesday. And until next time, I'll see you when I see you.